YouTube, Jeremy Wright here. This is session 2 of the 37-gallon natural Arkansas biotope aquarium project. One thing I'm immediately noticing, there were Malaysian trumpet snails in this substrate. So I'm going to be removing those. Like I said in part 1, this was live aquarium substrate from another tank. I just didn't know it had snails living in it. So Malaysian trumpet snails can live in dry aquarium soil, and I'll show you the container I have it in. See that one center screen, the dark one? That's the one that was holding the soil. That one next to it was holding some pool filter sand from another tank. And now moving over here, 6 weeks later, actually, it was from this tank, actually. 6 weeks later, this Malaysian trumpet snails, aka trapdoor snails, they're still alive. They weren't, and it wasn't really even wet. So I'm not sure how that goes, but I'll tell you about what happened to this tank today. I filled it from somewhere around the halfway mark up to the top, just using tap water. It's still a bit cloudy because of two things. First off, live soil, pool filter sand, adding old tank water. The tank water wasn't cloudy. The sand was. The soil wasn't the cloudy part. The sand was. You don't rinse it. That's actually nutrients. The second part, which is more why it's cloudy, is if you look down at these plants, these guys came from my dad's pond today. I think this is a species of Nahas, Najas in English, that may not be cataloged or identified. When I looked in the aquatic plants of Arkansas, this was not listed. So perhaps it's just not listed as an aquatic plant. Perhaps it's something that's just not cataloged. So I'm going to have to try a little harder to identify this. Now I have the same plant in a tank right over here that I collected about a week or two ago. And it's just a beautiful little gem of a plant for something that was just found in the pond. Otherwise, pausing for a sec. So yeah, this plant, something that isn't yet identified, and I'm going to have to try because some things just aren't, in the local registry, even though this is the natural state. So going back to this aquarium, notice the bit of driftwood. This came basically from the banks of the Arkansas River. It looks to me like it's a boxwood, like an ornamental shrub that is just flipped upside down. This is kind of how I found it, root side up. And this tank is pretty cloudy. There's a hydrocodal plant here, or at least what I think is a hydrocodal. I'll identify that as well. But the tank's a little bit cloudy. That's kind of normal for a natural soil under sand tank, especially if you take plants from mud that have a glob of mud on the bottom and then dunk them down in. And that's just something that will clear up over the next few days. 48 hours or so, this tank will probably be crystal clear. The Malaysian trumpet snails that were... Okay, so I just started recording this and my neighbor ran in and unannounced and started talking, so I don't think I included this. This is the container that the soil, the live soil from this aquarium, and the sand that was from this aquarium previously where I was housing them. Now it's been like 6 weeks since I brought this tank in. I then didn't really do anything with it for a while. I had other priorities. Then I cleaned it out, resealed it, and I was ready for it. But it's been like 6 weeks. In that time, these Malaysian trumpet snails, aka trapdoor snails, were hanging out down in that bin, center screen. I didn't realize they were in there. But they clearly survived. But there's a problem. Malaysian trumpet snails are not from Arkansas, so if I'm trying to do an Arkansas biotope, I'm going to have to remove these Malaysian trumpet snails. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. Above the tank, we have this hang-on back filter that's got a bunch of like South American and Asian plants in it. I'll probably modify that a bit and you know, make it a little more appropriate. But for the time, I'm just gonna pick the snails out, and I'll probably leave the hang on back as it is while I'm setting the tank up, and then later on, when I've got it going a bit more, I'll do that. But I'm still going to try to procure some Proserpinaca palustris and some Riccia fluitans from local wildlife. Again, collect that stuff. If you're collecting from the wild, do that on private property. Don't just go out to the river. You can do that in my area. You can do that with driftwood as long as you're keeping it for personal use. You cannot sell it. In other words, you can't harvest driftwood from a local waterway for sale or for profit. You can, however, harvest it for personal use, like in an aquarium. You just can't do it and then offer it for sale, like in a Facebook group or something. That is illegal in my area and most places. So that's what we've got for day 2, session 2 on this. I'll give you an update on this 37-gallon tank once it goes a little further. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this sort of thing, give me a like or subscribe, and I'll definitely let you follow along.